Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to view my presentation today. My name is Jennifer Sordo, and my case study will be focusing on Ordinance Number 22-5446, which prohibits smoking on city-owned public beaches and city-owned public parks at all times, except in designated areas. So the city of Sarasota is known for their tourist attractions, especially parks and beaches, just like many other areas in Florida. So we will be seeing more of these being considered, this ordinance to be exact. So it is important to be aware of what will be taking place if you are a smoker. They are prohibiting cigarettes or anything that carries plastic, filters, things that don't decompose in our environment naturally. Cigars are the exception, however, so cigars, as long as they don't carry any filter tips or filters, they are making that exception since it decomposes naturally in the environment and does not do as much harm to the tourist attractions of Sarasota. However, secondhand smoking is mentioned in an act or the law that was passed that allowed this ordinance to come about. Um, However, it looks like no matter what, you're not going to be able to stop the habit of smoking. So this ordinance does face a complex issue uh, that you will be hearing, obviously, from our stakeholders and other citizens who have made public comments about. So taking a look at some of our stakeholders and their perspective, of course we have ordinance number 22-5446, which bans smoking on city-owned public parks and beaches, except in designated areas such as the parking lots. Each entrance would be accompanied by a large no smoking or smoke-free park sign. Then small signs would be added right before you would cross that line entering into the park or the beach. And next to those small signs would have receptacles so that visitors are able to discard of them before entering. Then we have the Ocean Conservancy, who is a nonprofit environmental group. They were involved in the Florida Clean Air Act that we'll be mentioning next. They did indicate that the cigarette butts are the fourth most harmful type of contamination and ingestion to marine life, which further defends the need to protect tourism and Florida's beaches. Next, we have the Florida Clean Air Act that was passed by the state of Florida. It preempts the regulation of smoking to the state of Florida. They do define it to be inhaling, exhaling, burning, carrying, possessing any lighted tobacco product. So that includes cigars, e-cigarettes, pipe tobacco, or any other lighted product. Next, we have the Florida Senate House Bill 105, which is the regulation of smoking by counties and municipalities. It was approved by Governor DeSantis in 2022, and it amended the Florida Clean Air Act to allow counties and municipalities to restrict smoking within the boundaries of public beaches and parks. However, they did indicate that the uh, counties and municipalities are not able to prohibit unfiltered cigars since they are deemed a little bit safer than cigarettes or any other filtered cigars, just because they naturally decompose in the environment, so it wouldn't be harmful to our beaches. The staff analysis of the House Bill 105, however, did state that smoking alone has adverse impact to the public since secondhand smoke could be inhaled, and it does cause health problems such as cancer and fatal diseases. And they do state that secondhand smoke comes from simply burning a tobacco product or a smoker exhaling product as it's being used. Then we have the City of Public Works Department, and they'll be cooperating with the City of Sarasota on providing appropriate signage to communicate to the public about smoking areas and the violations that could exist. So we have our commissioners and other stakeholders who were involved in decision making. Mayor Eric Arroyo, he does believe that the city of Sarasota should be reasonable and have some restraint. However, he respects smokers' discretion and finds that since polluting is already illegal, we need to further enforce it with this ordinance since it does affect wildlife and tourism. Vice Mayor Kyle Batty recently had an experience where he had to be around smokers coming out from their vehicles and just smoking on the public beach, and he personally did not like it. He believes that the smoke will linger no matter what. No one is simply going to walk off of their seat or out of the stand to go smoke into the parking lot. However, he is willing to consider designating an area that way it stays off the beaches and the parks, or at least attempt to keep them off of those areas. Then we have Commissioner Jen Ahern Koch. After looking at the map, she was concerned because she found out that this map was from a 2009 resolution. So more clarity is needed because some of the borders were not updated to find out whether specific areas are privately owned or city owned. Also, the designated area markings were not clearly defined. Um, they were in gray boxes, and she thought that was very important before this ordinance were to ever pass. So she requested from the city attorney for an updated map. We have Commissioner Liz Alpert, who believes that this ordinance won't create criminals. They'll just be facing warnings rather than arrests. She does believe that this ordinance should apply to all parks to just create an awareness that contamination is not okay. However, she is open to designating areas or designating some parks specifically for smokers only. That way they do not have to come in contact with law enforcement. We have Commissioner Hagen Brody. He was primarily concerned with the publics who do smoke and wants to avoid too much contact with the police or with local law enforcement because he does not want to turn any of the residents into offender. Therefore, the city of Sarasota should have some restraint. The city attorney, Robert Fournier, he did indicate that parking lots are designated areas. However, it derives from a resolution that was adopted in 2009. The commissioners have the authority to take those designated areas off and designate other areas, therefore providing flexibility and not really having to deal with the complexity of parking lots being designated after all. He did take my recommendation about educating the public in regards to the need for unfiltered cigars since it's deemed a little safer than regular cigars, or I'm sorry, filtered cigars or cigarettes, and also law enforcement needing to be educated on distinguishing between a filtered and an unfiltered cigarette. Lastly, providing citizens a period of time so that they are made aware of this ordinance before violations are issued. Lastly, we have City Manager Marlon Brown. He did point out that after the resolution was passed a while back, um, complaints had died down about smoking in public parks and beaches. Another important point that he made is that some parks do not have a parking area, so pavilions or sidewalks would need to be used to designate an area. So my expert witness is Ronald Locke. He is the Signs and Marking Supervisor for Sarasota County. We communicated via email on Friday, September 2nd, 2022. So I learned from Ronald to be exact, that there are several agencies that are involved when uh, choosing a sign. They personally do not design the signs. By they, I mean Public Works Department itself. They only fabricate the signs. Other agencies have the options to purchase signs from approved vendors. Um, they also did help me understand that they are capable of installing signs for other departments within the county. However, in most situations, they would prefer to do the installation themselves. So in this case, um, it looks like the city itself would be able to do that installation. Um, as far as it being audited or uh, to assure that this is in compliance or that this is something visible to the public. He did indicate that their county would not get audited for these signs or from someone to check out these sites to ensure that it looks okay. Instead, they have a code enforcement team and a law enforcement who are the ones ensuring that regulations are being followed and enforced. Um, Another question that I had was if it was common for the Public Works Department to experience an issue with the type of sign or the location of the sign, and he did state that it's something that they deal with daily, so it is inevitable. Most people are not aware of MUTCD standards and are just looking for clarification to understand why the signs are being installed or why they are at specific locations. Um, so he helped me understand that there are also engineers that are involved and commissioners are involved as well in the final say of approving the sign. So there is more than one agency and many more stakeholders involved in the situation. So my questions were really concerning the signs because they are important to communicate that the public is allowed to smoke unfiltered cigars, but not cigarettes. Um, so I'm hoping that they do make the signs that communicate that information with the violations that could occur as well. So before I give you a preview of my presentation at the public hearing, um, or my recommendation to be exact, I wanted to write this out in bullet point form. One of my recommendations was that uh, the importance of designating these areas because government should be able to provide citizens the freedom to smoke, and it does create a sense of collaboration with the community to respect their habits. Before enforcing this ordinance, however, they should be taking incremental steps. For example, they need to educate local law enforcement on distinguishing between a filtered and an unfiltered cigar to avoid confusion, obviously violations being the most important thing. Another thing would be a period should be allowed for citizens to be made aware of the ordinance before any fines or penalties are imposed. Um, there are large signs by the entrances that will be indicating no smoking on public parks or beaches. However, they should also communicate that there are receptacles available and obviously where the designated area would be and such. Lastly, I did find out that Sarasota County or the city of Sarasota receives a community development block grant from the federal government to build a community in a sense. Um, I did recommend to work with that grant to possibly create nonprofits or community centers to provide communication and education to the public about contamination and smoking and the effects that it has on the public. Also, to provide those with opportunities who are unable to seek rehabilitation um, and who are willing or wanting to quit smoking as well. A little bit of education or an awareness could further reduce smoking, um, which again goes back to the environment. It could reduce polluting as well.
Her name is Jennifer Sorto, S-O-R-T. Yes. Ms. Sorto, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.